Great. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us here this morning. We'd like to welcome you and say thank you. We're really excited to have you all here to share more about the 500 Georgia Accelerator Program, which has just opened up applications, and they're open up now through May 25th, so plenty of time to apply. We're really excited launching this program. This is a partnership together with 500 Startups, Georgia's Innovation and Technology Agency, and Bank of Georgia. This is Georgia's first kind of full-scale international accelerator taking place in Georgia. So really, really excited to be part of this and have a chance to share more with you today. So my name is Ariane Diltz. I work with 500 Startups. I'm the program manager for the Georgia Accelerator. I'm joined today, we have Nato, who's our program coordinator. We're your hosts for this evening. We're gonna have a chance on the call now to hear from Pedro, who's also from 500 Startups, managing director of the program. In just a few moments, I'll turn it over to him to share a bit more about the accelerator program, kind of how it works and what kind of is needed to apply. And then the main kind of reason we're here today to hear from two founders who have gone through 500 programs, both in San Francisco and Saudi Arabia, to hear a little bit more about their experience, what the accelerator looks like as a founder. So we'll have a chance to first hear from them, and then also we'll have a chance at the end to ask all kind of questions that you guys might have. So all and any questions are welcome. Throughout the presentation now, as we kind of start kicking things off, feel free to use the chat box at any time. You can leave your questions there. You'll notice there's also like a little thumb feature below the questions where you can vote on whichever questions you see there that people start to share and you feel are kind of the most interesting or most important. So if you can kind of vote on your favorite questions, we'll do our best to make sure we can answer those all on the call today. So feel free to ask all your questions, don't be shy, and hopefully we'll share as much information with you today as we can. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pedro, our program managing director, to tell us a little bit more about the 500 Georgia Accelerator.
Thank you so much, Ariane. So it's great to finally be able to get this off the ground. And I don't think I need to spend too much time talking about 500, but for those of you who may still not be fully informed about what we are and what we do, we are an investment company and a group of family funds and acceleration programs with one single mission, which is to discover the best, the most talented entrepreneurs around the world, help them scale their companies, and help build global ecosystems where they can do so in an effective way. As a result, we have now operations and people, offices, and investments basically around the world. We are one of the most active early stage investors in the world. As a consequence, we have one of the largest portfolios in the world with over 2,400 companies now in our family. We hope some of you may become part of that too. This family that spreads out around the world includes both, like I said, investment funds and operational centers where we help build these ecosystems. When we enter these ecosystems, we usually have an approach where, next slide please, where we focus on three aspects of building up an ecosystem. One is the expertise for the founders, where we bring in our Silicon Valley best practices, our experience having accelerated hundreds and hundreds of companies, and we adjust that to the needs of the local founders. We then work with the local capital providers, both in terms of helping them invest following international best practices, and also helping them with their capital needs when that happens. And finally, we bring it all together under this network of funds and offices that we have around the world, of experts that we have around the world. This investment strategy is working. Our numbers are starting to speak for themselves. We have 18 unicorns in our family of investments now. I don't have to explain what a unicorn is. We have 70 plus companies that we call centaurs in this range of 100 million to a billion in valuation, and many more under that value. So we are really, really excited to be kicking off this program in Georgia and be able to help the local founders, the local investors, and the public side, the public institutions, build a robust early stage tech ecosystem in Georgia that will be able to generate more startups that can scale globally. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Georgia program. There will be a webinar specifically about the program itself. So you'll have one more opportunity to ask us a lot of questions about that. But just to kill your curiosity a little bit for now, this program is being brought in a true partnership of equal parts in an effort between 500, but also the Bank of Georgia and GITA, Georgia's Innovation and Technology Agency. Each of these entities bringing in a different set of skills, a different expertise. But the main goal is, at the end of the day, that this expertise, capital, and public policy is aligned with what you founders need. And together, we think that we put together a program that will help boost economic and social development in Georgia. The way we've designed this program is to attract the best of the best founders, the best of the best startups, with a focus on technology. So we are looking for companies that are pure technology plays, or at least they're a technology-enabled company that are solving a problem for a specific target, for a specific customer. It's very important that we know who we're building for when we are founders. The ambition of the companies is expected to be very high. We're looking for companies that are looking to build things for Georgia, but also have the ability to scale globally. And we will be looking at companies that present us at least a prototype and some signs of early traction that can be measured in different ways, revenue, users, etc. But there has to be some signals that that the market is looking for something like the one you're building. It's very important for us that the teams are cross-functional. We do like to see founders in early teams that complement each other, not just business, not just tech, but a complement. And we're looking for unique solutions. We know that when we help build ecosystems outside Silicon Valley, there's always going to be a version of something that already exists. That's not ultimately, or that's not per se a problem, but there has to be some uniqueness to that version of the solution, even if that is just some regional advantage that the team can bring in. And then also related with the ambition of the company, we're looking for companies that can be scalable and have at least a minimal idea of how they can monetize the things that they're building. The program finally is going to be focused on pre-Series A companies that can be backed by venture capital, because that's what we believe will leads to bigger, better results in Georgia at this point, given the level of maturity of the ecosystem. And finally, it's important to mention this: the companies will have to be registered in Georgia, or have an entity registered in Georgia to be able to participate in the program. The way we've designed the program is as follows. We split it in 4 phases. The first phase, we'll call it Foundations Boot Camps. And we're going to do 2 cycles of this. Let me start there. the first phase of each cycle is a foundations bootcamp where we'll work intensively with you on topics like customer discovery, helping you design your value proposition better, identifying what are the key metrics that you should be tracking from now and moving forward. This is a 2 weeks stage where we're going to be working with roughly 15 companies on each of the 2 cohorts. We'll then move on to a period we call remote experimentation of 8 weeks, where you will be supported by mentors from our network, and you'll continue working on some of the growth experiments that you'll hear and learn about in the bootcamp. And the goal there is to see how you perform during that period of 8 weeks, how much you can grow, how much you can demonstrate the ability to become a successful company. And from there, we will pick the best companies, roughly 5 to 10 companies, to participate in each of the following cohorts in the stage that we're calling growth intensive. In growth intensive, we're going to go deep into topics like marketing, sales, so we can help you start monetize all the things that you've been building and have tested during your growth experiments. And then we'll also start to help you with all your efforts around pitching, fundraising, and preparing you to fundraise and start thinking about global scale. Finally, the best of the best will enter what we're calling Silicon Valley Exchange, where we'll select a smaller group of 2 to 3 companies per cohort, and they will spend time with us in Silicon Valley, learning from experts there, being part of our community of founders and investors and co-investors in Silicon Valley, and soak that in and help that, and hope that that will help you build even stronger ventures. And again, we will do 2 of these spread out in time. One will start this summer, and then the other one will start later this year. Ariane?
Terrific. Thank you so much, Pedro, for sharing a little bit more about the program and the partnership and how this all works. So now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nato, who's also representing 500 Startups as our local program coordinator. She's going to go ahead and introduce our founders so we can hear more from them and learn all about their experience. Oh, Nato, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Thanks for the floor, Ariane. Thanks for introduction, Pedro, and huge thanks to our founders, guest speakers today, Leonard and Paddy, who agreed to share their insights about experience of working with 500 startups with our audience. So we are going to attract through 500 Georgia program. So thanks, Paddy and Leonard again. And I'll go to the questions list. So we have a lot of questions for you. We want to know everything and to enable our audience to know everything about the program to build the right expectations. So but first I would like to ask you to, by the way, just to introduce you shortly, our guest speakers are Leonard Lee and Fadi Azuni. Leonard Lee is founder of Dispatcher. He is from Batch 25 from San Francisco, a program accelerator, which is based in Silicon Valley. And Fadi Azuni is founder of Wetwork, which is MIC, it's a program name, 500 startups program name in Arabia, Saudi Arabia, and Wetwork is based in Egypt, and he has just raised about 1 million from demo day right after the accelerator, but he'll share more details about that soon. And please, the floor is yours. Please introduce your startup to us. What is your startup? Who are you? Where are you coming from? What your startup does? And which 500 program have you participated in? We're looking forward to hear from you about all of that.
Sure.
I'll go ahead. I'll start. Hi, I'm Leonard. So I'm based in San Francisco. And as Nato said, I'm a co-founder of Dispatcher. We're an enterprise SaaS startup with investors, including, if you guys have heard of, these are US-based investors primarily, but Floodgate. So Mike Maples, who is one of the, I think he's rated as one of the top 20 investors in the world on the Forbes Midas list, backed VCs. And then obviously 500 startups. As Nato said, I was in batch 25 based out here in California. So this was last summer. Just a little bit about our company. We're building a future where preventable wildfires, outages, and other catastrophes stemming from infrastructure companies like utilities are a thing of the past. That's kind of our future vision. That's what we're building towards. And that's kind of what we're working with customers right now to provide. So.
Thank you so much. Fadi?
Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm Fadi Lazouni. I'm a veterinarian and I'm VetWorks founder. VetWorks basically it provides pet care services and products at home with other things in the pipeline. Like we want to give animals voices. We want to give pets voices. So with all the things in our pipeline, like the wearable device and stuff like that, we'll be able to always keep pets healthy and make their pet parents happy. So, and we're operating currently in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and we're basically, our focus is in the MENA region.
Cool. Thanks so much. Just to know about your motivations, you are building a feature, Leonard, and Fadi, you are building the remote service for pets. How did you came to that idea? What has motivated you to get on this and take it that seriously?
So at least for us, we are starting with utilities, and I had actually worked in utilities for a number of years as a consultant. So I worked in the largest utilities across the US and saw how manual that process was of even going out to mitigate potential issues. So they would literally use paper maps, a clipboard with notes, and they would handwritten notes. And that's how they would go out and figure out, of the 124 million trees within their service territory, which trees, which vegetation that they would go out and mitigate first. And we knew that was problematic. Like, it was very clear, but they had no way of really understanding how they could actually optimize that. And so my co-founder and I basically started a system that could take them from end to end to actually reduce the amount of time from anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to mitigate specific issues down to a matter of days. So that's kind of where we focused initially.
Great. How about you, Fadi?
Yeah, something that what Leonard just said, but as a veterinarian and a pet owner, I face both pains, like the provider's pain and the user pain, and the customer pain. So that's in the region, that's in the Arab region. They don't get like the opportunity that's in other regions get. So, for example, we don't have like big veterinary hospitals or big pet hospitals. All of them are small, like unregulated clinics scattered all over our countries. So what most of vets do in our region is that they career shift. They just forget about like all what they've dreamed, all what they have dreamt of. So and most probably all of veterinarians all over the world, they join the veterinary medicine studies because they love animals, they love pets. Okay, so they reach a point where they basically can't make any money from their profession, so they career shift. On the other hand, pet owners face like, it's something very well known, like for everyone, that the Arab veterinarians are not good, and that's completely wrong. They just don't have the opportunity to prove that they're right. Okay, so that's what simply VetWorks is doing. VetWorks is giving an opportunity for good vets to prove that they're good and provide services for pet owners who are looking for these services. The same thing applies for trainers, for dog trainers, for groomers, for even pet supply providers, pet supplies providers. we're just, I don't know how to say it, but we're just regulating the industry here, making it more easier for providers to reach to customers and customers to get a really good service. So yeah.
Wow, thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, please add, Paddy.
So yeah, the solution came from that. I'm a veterinarian. I faced these problems, and I was a pet owner as well. Like I know how to treat my pet, but like
Wow, thank you so much. It's really very interesting how you came up with these ideas, and it is good that it was really connected with your past experience and background. But how did you feel that it was right time for applying to the accelerator? And was there any specific need you or challenge you were facing for that period? For what you were you thought that it is right time for applying for accelerator and getting there?
Sure, I can start. So when we applied to 500, you guys might have heard about the Northern California wildfires. A lot of those were started because vegetation or trees essentially came in contact with high voltage power lines. You know, generally anywhere from 200 to 500 kilovolts power lines, which was going to spark and create this massive fire. And it was rampant all throughout California. And at the time, we were actually we had just built a vegetation management tool. We hadn't even focused necessarily specifically on helping prevent these catastrophes. And so when we applied to 500, we were sort of in our own fire drill of sorts. You know, we had to figure out how to message. You know, what's the best way to talk about what we're working on? How do we actually go and sell this into customers? You know, because it is such a difficult topic to talk about when you're trying to prevent a huge problem, you know, that's occurring right now. I mean, it wasn't just in California. Obviously, we've seen the bushfires in Australia, but even beyond wildfires, right? Any type of outages that you guys might see, from windstorms, ice, snow, rain, anything that might cause an outage, that's what we could solve. And we just needed help. We needed other eyes on our business to really kind of help us think through what's the best way to approach this. So anyways, that's why we decided to apply for 500 specifically. And the enterprise sale in particular was a challenge for us because we were running into walls where we had already closed deals, but we hadn't created what we call like this sales playbook. We hadn't figured out how do we get from identifying the champion to negotiating to closing that deal, like in a seamless way that we could actually replicate it with other sales reps as we go and build our business. And so that's why we came into 500, was to kind of understand how to do that in a much more thoughtful manner than we probably were in the first place.
Cool. How about you, Paddy?
yeah, I have a bit of a different story. I'm not so proud of it, but we applied. I applied for 500 startups because I needed the 50K, or I needed the investment that 500 was going to make. But then, and by the way, I don't know why did 500 accept it that at the first place. Like, we had like very little traction. Seriously, like we were doing 7 transactions per month, and we're a marketplace. So yeah, so I was in for the money, okay, but everything has changed, and everything's changed just after we joined the program. Like, I figured out that it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's about what we learn inside. Because at the end of the day, I was just a veterinarian. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about like running a company. And it's hard to run a company. It's like there's a lot of things to do. So why did I apply? I applied for the investment that 500 was doing, and when I entered the program, it was completely different. Like, we learned a lot. Like, 500 startups like changed the way I think.
Yeah. And actually, this is my question, which is coming now. How did this program help you actually? Yeah, you decided to apply to overcome certain challenge you had on that moment, but how useful how did this program paved your way on your startup journey? How useful did you find it? And can you, how valuable was it this period? And could you highlight three main things from your experience about the program, 500 program?
Sure. And I love what Fadi just said. That is so typical or so true of almost everyone that comes into the program, right? We all are looking for money, right? Like the default for startups is that we're going to run out of money. We're always going to run out of cash. Like there's very few startups, and we hear about them in the news, but very few startups that have enough cash to last a while, right? And so almost everyone that was in my batch, you know, a lot of us were running on fumes, right? Like, you know, they barely had money in their bank account. They were just trying to figure things out, but they had a nugget. They had something that they latched onto that made their ideas very powerful, right? And that's why I love what Fadi has, right? Like there were so many examples of that in our batch, right? Some founders had just started, you know, maybe months before the actual program. Some had started years before. So it kind of ranged, but everyone had a really strong, compelling idea. And within 500, I think what's fantastic is because especially like the partners and the folks at 500, the mentors we work with, they've seen so many startups come through this program. You get very good at understanding how to craft your story, how to craft your pitch. So it's actually compelling for investors. And so that's obviously what they worked with us on specifically. I would say the most valuable thing I got out of it was something that Fadi did talk about, which is, you know, it's what we learned from the program, from the founders, especially in our batch. It was invaluable. That's not something I probably went into the program expecting. You know, I would obviously, like, the investment was great. Demo day was fantastic. But the founders specifically kind of helped us shape our story a lot more specifically in much more detail than I would have ever expected. They gave us advice, you know, day to day on just things to help make our business better and stronger. And so probably as I look back on my experience there, you know, if there were three things that kind of were the top highlights, you know, obviously demo day, the prep for demo day, that was an experience you'll never have ever again, most likely, right? And that was an amazing experience, really kind of like being forced to like refine your story, you know, make it very clear, put it into a 2-minute pitch format. And that's something that I think really forces you and challenges you to be incredibly focused. And that helps not only for demo day, that helps in every part of your business, right? And it was a skill that kind of we just repeated over and over again throughout the batch. The second thing was a lot of these micro or smaller conversations we had with folks from 500, folks, the other founders, who ultimately, you know, we might only spend a couple minutes discussing a topic, but that topic was critical for that day, that moment, in shaping kind of the direction of maybe our sales, maybe our fundraising strategy, whatever it was. And it's something that if you just go to lectures, seminars, etc., you won't necessarily get that richness of help, I guess, from other folks, because of the fact that it's just a specific, very targeted problem that you're solving at that moment. And the third thing was the community, right? So it's, I remember the first time that we hung out as a batch together was this beach bonfire. We have this beach called Ocean Beach in Northern California. It's a huge beach and it's fantastic, except it's incredibly cold. Everyone's like freezing. Everyone's got down jackets, parkas. You know, people have their kids out. You know, and like you're just huddling around this fire because it's so cold and frigid. But there's this bonding that kind of happened that night, which kind of carried us through the rest of the batch. And you know, honestly, we developed such great friendships starting from that night up until now. Like I still I still meet with a lot of my friends from the batch on a regular basis. Like we'll either get together and just talk about our businesses, check in each other, we'll text each other. Sometimes even now, while a lot of us are working at home, we'll play games online with one another. So there's just a lot of community, a lot of relationships that we built that I know will not only help us build and strengthen our business, but will be lifelong friendships. And that's kind of what I loved about the program.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Thanks so much. What about you, Fede?
Yep. I think Leonard said it all. Like, yeah, he talked about everything. But let me say this: like, this program changed the way I think, like the growth mindset. Like, before entering the program, we had like some kind of projections, like numbers and stuff like that. It could totally change after the program. It totally changed. Like it totally changed in a positive way, and in more numbers. Like we now see and believe that we can do a lot more than what we expected ourselves to do. For an example, I live in Egypt, and the company's headquarters is in Egypt, but the program was in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, and now we're operating in Saudi Arabia as well. So it was a very, very, very good opportunity for us to look at a new market, and actually it's the second biggest market in the region. So yeah, the program also helped us like to put an eye on different markets.
Cool.
And here's the thing. No, yeah, give me a second, Nato.
Sure. Take your time. Take your time.
The type of mentors that the 500 startups programs have is like most of them are founders. So yeah, they know what they're talking about, and they know whom they're talking to.
Yeah.
Like they don't just say like give you instructions or stuff like that. They actually tell you what they have done. If it works for you, then it works for you. It works for you. So that's another thing that I've learned, like the humbleness. Like, man, they're really successful, and they're just like they go on stage like in a talk or something and just talk like about like the easy stuff that they've done. You can listen to them, like they're real founders. They've done that before, and they're here just to share their experience. So even the way that they give you the learnings or the information, it's different. Like you can accept it. Okay. Another thing, after finishing the program, I knew that I don't know. Okay. So before the program, I didn't know that I didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's something important. Like when you don't know that you don't know, you just stay as you are. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, sure. It's quite philosophic, but I absolutely makes sense for me, and I guess for the audience as well. Thank you so much. You both shared your highlights in different ways, and I think it showed real big picture of what value what this 500 startups program create. And now, as time is running out, I will ask my last question, which is about what would you say to startups who are thinking of applying to 500 Startup Georgia program, and what would be your 2-3 tips for them for get enrolled in the program?
So the advice that I got, at least before I applied, was to reach out to other 500 founders that you know, or just try to find someone that you can talk to, and at the very least, get them to review your application, do a mock interview with you. I think that can dramatically change how you come off. That's sort of like the base level way of prepping for the application process. The second one, I would say, which we didn't necessarily know kind of coming in, but like after the fact, we realized, the more you can kind of, potentially get to know some of the 500 folks, I think you'll get a better sense for what they actually are looking for. And you'll get a sense of like, okay, am I on the right track? Is this appealing? Is this like something that's actually worthwhile? And the more you can kind of get to know folks, the more you will understand whether or not you're a good fit for 500 startups right now. And I think the right now is a very key component. Some folks, I think it'll take them 2-3 times to apply before they'll get in. Some folks, are fortunate to get in on the first try. And it just depends. And honestly, your company may have to go through a couple iterations before you get something that really sparks. And people are like, oh my God, that makes a ton of sense. This is exactly what we want to build, right? And that's when, a partner or someone at 500 wants to back you and say, yes, let's bring you in. Let's take you through 4 months, or I don't know how long the Georgia Accelerator will be, but like for us, it was 4 months. It was a grueling 4 months. It is by no means easy. Well, at least for us, we relocated. A lot of people relocated to the Bay Area, which is expensive, and if you have family, you're uprooting your entire family, or you're leaving your family back kind of where they were. So it's not an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination. But I will guarantee you, most people who came here came out with so much more understanding of how to build that business. A lot of the frameworks, a lot of the understanding of what to do, that you could see that they accelerated the growth of their company, usually 5-10-fold coming out of that program. And it may not necessarily it may not show up exactly in your revenue growth right away, but it's how you set up the systems in your business, how you hire appropriately, even how you fundraise. At the base level, almost everyone was trying to understand how to fundraise better. And I think just having that knowledge alone will help tremendously, not only for this next round, let's say the seed round, but even your Series A and beyond, because that is something that it's very difficult to find information, like good, valuable information out on the internet, or even just talking to other people. The fundraising landscape changes so quickly, so often. And as many people know, the past several months, fundraising has dramatically shifted and changed. And so you can see founders in our community. We have a huge Slack channel with all the founders talking about what's the best way to fundraise right now. We have folks who are coming in from the industry, VCs, et cetera, talking about here's what you should look for, here's what you should consider. And that has been immense. You would not have access to that at all, if you didn't have a network or a group of founders to go to talk to. And so that's some of at least the initial advice I would give folks.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks. How about you, Fadi? What would be your tips and tricks?
So talking again about the program. So yeah, it's not only about the program. Like it's after the program also. You get a lot of like Leonard said, a lot of advices or experience from other founders, fellow founders, from mentors. The perks you get from 500 startups even after the program ends. Like it's 500 startups give like continuous support from day one from the accelerator and from the program, and it's definitely you're going to be your business is going to be different. Like it will definitely grow. I don't know. I didn't see what. There are 4 batches now from MISC 500 from the program I was in, and until then, until now, there is no one like company that has not grown.
No,
So it's definitely something to like work for and see. As Leonard said, like check out 500 founders. They will definitely help you because they have this mindset. So they will definitely help you and tell you like, give you their opinion about the company you're trying to apply with for the program.
that's really cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your insights, which were founders' perspective on 500 startups, and which was so valuable and interesting. Even I heard so many new things. And thanks for that. We understand that every program is unique, and 500 startups pays a lot of attention to tailoring program to local need, and we cannot compare San Francisco batch or Saudi Arabia program to Georgian one, and we cannot make direct parallels, but I really think that your insights are so super useful for Georgian audience to get a sense about the program and set right expectations about this open call we have now. But there are so many other questions, I believe, from the audience, and I don't want to take much time from there. And thanks again for participation, being our guest speakers. And now I'll give floor to Ariane, who will moderate Q&As for now. And for Q&As to the audience, I would like to ask you to post your questions in Q&A section here, and also look through the questions. You might find a relevant question to yours already posted, and upvote it to make sure that your question and your interest will be satisfied through this stage. Thank you so much. And Ariane, the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Nato, for facilitating. And of course, thank you, Leonard and Fadi, for both sharing about your experiences. So as Nato mentioned, please continue to type in your questions and vote on the ones you'd like to hear us answer in these last minutes as well. Before we jump into that, just a few quick reminders. So applications are currently open until between now and May 25th. There was a question about how to apply. So the application is all online. You can go to the URL that you see here, ecosystems.500.co/500Georgia. So if you go to this site, you'll see more information about the program as a whole, kind of a reminder about some of the highlights of the program, as we heard earlier from Pedro as well. And from this page, you'll find a link to apply now and fill out the form 100% online. And then we'll get through as many questions as we can now, but also a reminder, any additional questions you can always email to 500Georgia@500startups.com. So on that note, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. To jump back into our box. Great. So we did have one question. I know Pedro actually already answered written as well, but with our founders online, there's a question kind of, I think, around like time commitment and how, as a founder, you're running your business full time. How does that work with also doing like an accelerator, and which is like, you know, during the intensive periods and an all day commitment as well? Can you tell us a little bit about how you balance that?
Sure. And for us, just to give a sense of the time commitment, we had programming from 500, which most of it was optional, right? So it just depended upon, you had to make the best decision whether or not this was relevant for you. So for example, we're enterprise SaaS, you know, and so if it was a lecture or a seminar around something consumer related, you know, it was not necessarily something we should be obviously going to, right? And so you have to manage your time just like you would running your business. There's so many priorities and there's so many things that you have to learn to say no to. And so that was just a bit of the program itself. I will say it is extremely busy even with that, because there are so many various interesting topics and discussions to have that you don't have as much time as you normally would, obviously, to run your business during the day. Obviously, we had our normal sales meetings, you know, any team meetings that we had to have throughout the day, but a lot of it got shifted to the nighttime. You know, and so that was a lot of where we kind of realized, okay, we're going to make this trade-off, and it was very important to us. And what was also important, I came in with this goal of just really trying to like build friendships within the batch. With that, you know, that meant that I was also sacrificing sleep, you know, many nights, right? And so I would actually go out, grab dinner with folks, you know, we go grab drinks, do whatever. And that was a bit of, I knew it was just for a short period of time, but I was willing to kind of make that trade-off just because I knew it was probably one of the more valuable things that I could get out of the program. And so I was willing to do that. So it's not as bad as it seems in some sense. And maybe it's because, as founders, I think we run off of very little sleep to begin with. So it was just more a sense of like prioritizing what was important to us throughout the batch.
Terrific. Great. Next question maybe goes to Pedro. We've had a lot of questions kind of around traction and MVP. Can you tell us a little bit more about what can be considered as early traction, how that's measured? Is it customer sales, or are we looking, what kind of metrics are we looking at?
Yeah, so the metrics will depend on the nature of the company, and we're not going to go here in a long description of which metrics matter for which type of company. I think the most important point at this stage of our conversation is that the traction can be measured as users growth. It can be measured as number of deals being signed. It can be measured as revenue, obviously, but it can also be measured as partnerships that have been drafted, partnerships that have, or pre-orders that have been made. So we can obviously at an early stage look at many different indicators to understand if the company is actually building something that people want, and that's the most important part.
Great, terrific. Another question for you, Pedro, while we have you front and center. There've been a few questions as well regarding funding. Is this an investment program? Is it equity free, or what can you tell us about that?
So there's no acceleration fees to participate in the program. There is an investment program. There is an investment parts to the program sponsored by the Bank of Georgia, and that is associated with equity as any other investment program.
Great. We had a couple other questions, kind of quick ones, I think, about just more requirements. So one, does this need to be a high-tech company? And two, is it necessary to establish a branch in Georgia? Could you reiterate some of those kind of criteria for us?
Yeah. I mean, the definition of high-tech can be very broad, but yes, we are looking for technology companies, or at least at minimum, a company that is using technology to leverage other services or other products. So what we call technology enabled. The second part, remind me, was about the second.
You need to open a branch in Georgia.
Yes.
If they're a European startup.
To attend the program, the companies need to have a Georgian registered entity. They don't have to have it immediately when they apply, but it has to be registered by the time the program starts, or slightly after or before that.
Great. Wonderful. Maybe a question going back to our founders. I saw before on our list as well, someone kind of asking about, should you be concerned about sharing your idea, and, other founders are there, someone could, run on that. How did that kind of work for you in your programs?
There's generally no conflict of interest, at least within the batch for sure. So there was no issue of ever like kind of overlapping our businesses. And I think that's probably true, at least for the specific fund that is funding this specific batch, right? And so there should never be really a conflict of interest of sharing ideas, et cetera. And everyone obviously is coming in with generally high integrity, and like, so there's no issue of like, okay, they're going to go tell someone else or something like that. So like you actually want to get more value out of having these conversations, these frank conversations with people, then it'll behoove you to just hold back secrets or information because you're afraid something's going to be leaked or someone else is going to take it out. Like, we take privacy very seriously. Like, they wouldn't allow us to even post on social media that we were even in the program until a certain date. So like, everyone's very good about that.
Wonderful. Fadi, anything to add from your perspective on that, or any of the things we've been talking to? I think you're on mute. Yeah.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, awesome. Perfect. Let's see. And the question, maybe Nato, you can help answer this one. Someone was asking about if you're a foreigner coming to Georgia, kind of what the visa situation looks like. Is that easy to do?
Yeah, it is very super easy to answer because most of the countries have visa-free regime with Georgia. Around 100 countries have visa-free regime, and they can use they can stay in Georgia for a year without any additional requirements, and visas are done on the border. So in most of the cases, there won't be necessity from us to support on visa issues, but if there will be, of course, I'm here to help.
Wonderful. Pedro, another question back for you about the programs and the mentors. Someone asking, will the mentors be Georgian or from Silicon Valley, American? Where are our mentors coming from?
Our mentors will come from around the world, some of them from Silicon Valley, some from other countries. There will be a resident team of mentors that come from the 500 family, and we may bring on board for some specific topics on specific lectures Georgian experts, because we know some of the topics need to be contextualized. So there will be a mix, but the resident team is all from the 500 family, some from Silicon Valley, some from other countries. All of them were previous founders. They have the experience of building companies from the ground up, and they feel the pain of the founders that we will be training in the program.
Great, good to know. We've had several questions here too, kind of asking for general, like, top tips or advice for startups that are thinking about considering an accelerator now, applying and what that looks like. So maybe we can hear, kind of as we're nearing the end of our time, but if we can hear from each of our founders, and Pedro, from your perspective, what are like the top advice that you would give a startup who's considering to apply now? Any mistakes or things to avoid, and kind of, yeah, what advice you might have for them?
Yeah, maybe start with the founders.
Sure.
Maddie.
Yeah. So okay, I'll talk again about the investment. Okay, about the fund that we got from 500 startups, and that was our first mistake. We used it wrong. Okay. So so it's not about money. Don't think it's about money only. It's about using the money in the right way. So yeah, that was the biggest mistake that we did. Using the cash that we got in the wrong way.
And cash management is huge. I think that's obviously because you have such limited cash. Learning to use it on the appropriate things is incredibly important. A lot of people, we could spend almost the entire money that we have in our bank on marketing or sales, right? And like that's not always the most efficient way of using it. And so at least one of the things that I think about as one of the biggest pieces of advice is we're essentially scientists. We are running micro experiments all the time to try to figure out what will actually work for our specific product, in which specific channel, which countries we're running in. And you're running these experiments as quickly as you possibly can, so that you can get answers of, yes, this makes sense, this is working, let's pour more investment, more money, more time, more resources into it, or no, just cut it off, right? And so that idea, we always talk about MVP. It's more from a product standpoint. I think about these micro experiments across the entire continuum of our startup, right? Like those are the things that you just need to constantly test and understand, is this right? Or should we actually just move on? And these tests should be quick. They should be, hopefully, if not within a day or a couple of days, like weeks, or, nothing longer than that. And that's one of our biggest mistakes, was we spent months, building out this sales team, which at the time was not appropriate because we had no sales playbook. We had no way of actually telling the sales folks that we were hiring. And these are amazing sales folks, right? They had one guy had $2 million in commission the year before he joined our team, right? Which meant he sold about $20 million in business. So he was a great salesperson, right? But because we didn't have the framework for him, it was very difficult at the early stages for him to be able to get on.
Okay, thank you. So I will wrap up the question, and I will actually flip it a little bit or twist it a little bit, and instead of talking about the 3 things the startup should be doing or 3 errors to avoid, I would focus on the things you should be doing to get your application to be more successful to our program. How about that? And I would say that first thing is to present a very strong application deck. There's tens, hundreds of websites that will tell you the key slides to include in your application slide. If you don't have those, you can also reach out to us. Make sure that it's a concise application that focuses on the key points. We don't need PhD thesis on your venture. And make sure to highlight the key metrics of the things that you've achieved so far and where you think you can go in the next 3 to 6 months. That will give us a clear understanding that you know what you're doing. And then we'll talk.
Terrific. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your tips. Unfortunately, we are at end of time for today, but we'll leave the session open for just a couple more minutes because there are some questions, if you haven't seen already, on the answered tab that have been kind of written out, some answers there. Any of the leftover questions that we didn't have a chance to address on live time today, we'll follow up and send some of those by email as well, with a recording of today's webinar. So you can always go back if there's any parts you missed or want to hear again. So thank you again very much for joining us today. We have another webinar on Tuesday, May 12th, same time, same place. And on that call, we'll be talking a little bit more about like the specific kind of program, criteria, application process, and any more kind of these technical questions that you might have as far as having a successful application and getting to the program. So for everything else, please refer to our website or send us questions at 500Georgia at 500startups.com. Thank you again, everyone, for joining in today. And a big thank you to Leonard, Fadi, and Pedro for sharing with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
All right, thank you again. For those who are still lingering on, we're going to close out in just a couple minutes. So just make sure if you had any last questions you're trying to read up on the answer, you can do that now. And a reminder one more time, more information can be found on our website, or feel free to reach out to us at 500Georgia at 500startups.com. 500georgia.com. We're happy to answer any questions that you have there, and we hope we will see you again in a couple weeks on May 12th for another webinar session. Thank you all for joining us today.